Hello there, I'm Tabletop Toby, and welcome to the board game fun phase. Today we're going to be talking about how to save a world. This is the latest game from Burnt Island Games, designed by Yuval Grinspan, and this game has the unique theme of the asteroid coming to destroy Earth. As you can see here, it looks like it didn't go very well in this version. And so you are a scientist and you're investing in either a laser to try to destroy the asteroid, a shield to protect the Earth from the asteroid, or you're investing in just, running and trying to grab all the humans and species and just jetting away. So those are the options. And it's worker placement and deck building, engine building. So I think with How to Save a World, it's important first to talk about theme. I mean, obviously you have this asteroid that's barreling towards Earth. So through the various mechanisms, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, you're going to be investing in these different options to fight the asteroid. One is which is the laser, which is this top track. We're just going to blast the asteroid and destroy it. The next is going to be the shield. So if the laser fails, then we're going to put up the shield and protect the Earth from the asteroid that way. And if the shield fails, well, then the last option is we need to get those shuttles ready. We need to gather up all the species and we need to run. That's right. The last option is just run. So as you invest in these different resources, as you move these tracks, this is a bag builder. You're going to be putting these different cubes into this bag. And at the end of each round, you draw these out and you work on these projects, which is this board right here. If any of these reach this asteroid, or there's a mechanic where this asteroid moves forward as well, when these black cubes are drawn out, if the asteroid actually reaches Earth, then that triggers this in-game experience. And there's this kind of dramatic thing at the end of the game, which I'm kind of here for. And so you draw 10 cubes at the end of the game. And so there might be, depending on how many people invested in the laser and how many of those were drawn earlier, you're going to draw 10 cubes and put all the pink cubes for the laser and all black cubes into this track. And if it reaches this trophy, then the laser has succeeded. And then the people that invested in the laser and are the 1, 2, 3 slots there are going to earn a little bit more points than the people that invest in the other ones. However, if the laser fails, then we move on and we draw 10 more cubes. We put the cubes that were for the blue and greens back in the bag. We draw another 10 and we try to throw up the shield and we see if the shield works. And then if that succeeds, then the shield has succeeded, and the people who invested in the shield track and got the 1, 2, 3 spots there, then they get a little extra points. But if the shield failed, then the people on the green track, on the species track, I think it's called, which is species because we're running, we're just saving the species as best we can, all the animals and the peoples, then whoever got 1, 2, 3 there gets a little bit more points. Now you still get points for investing in the other tracks. And in fact, you probably want to invest in those because you'll just be giving up points if you don't. And also because there is an element of luck here. People on a whole may have invested more in one of the tracks, but if there's enough invested in the others, then it may just end up on a whim, weird, rare chance that, well, we invest in the laser, we thought it was going to work, but this is just like reality where like there was something wrong and we had the triangulation wrong, or we used the meters instead of the feet and whoops, the laser didn't work. So you never quite know. So if you're opposed to luck being an aspect of your game, then you don't want to play this. But if you like the theming, which I think this is fun on the theming, then you might like this. And if you're okay with that, and I think it leads to a very fun game thematic moment at the end where everyone's like looking at the bag like, come on, it has to be the laser. Everyone put in the laser, or like no one put in the laser, or I didn't have the ability to invest in the laser, so come on, I'm really hoping for that rare chance where the laser doesn't work even though more people invested in it. So it's just, there's that fun element at the end of the game, which I think is really cool, But if you're opposed to luck, if you want a deterministic, more people invested in this, and therefore it should happen, then you don't want to play this game. But if you're into theme and you want that kind of shenanigans bag building aspect with a little bit of luck in there, and the probabilities are whatever was invested in more is going to win, but that's the probability. And if there were enough investments in other things, then that's still just a probability. And that's science, folks. So that's kind of a cool overall aspect of this game, and I really dig that, and I love that it is different than other things I have seen. I think that's something I enjoy about board games, is I continue to be surprised by different twists and things in games, and this is a fun one. So how do we go about investing in these different projects? Well, it's a worker placement game with a bit of deck building, engine building. And something I'm really digging about this game is that it's more limited in time scope and in terms of complexity scope, in that you can only buy so many cards. There's kind of a mechanism in the game that makes buying cards very expensive and kind of throttles down how many cards you can actually buy. I think that's kind of cool, in this kind of luck asteroid factor and how the bag works. The game just isn't going to last that long. And I think that's a good thing. It gives you a complexity of experience in that what you're doing on your turns in terms of going to these, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, you're moving up these tracks, you're increasing your resources, and you're buying these cards that allow you to kind of get more efficient with different things. And none of that is super complex. However, how you navigate through those things and build those efficiencies can be super complex. And I like that balance. I like that what you're doing is more simplified. The game is built to be in a shorter time frame, but how you can navigate through those, there's a lot of different options. And if you see those possibilities of combos and which cards work well together, you can do some really cool things, but it's more kind of in a confined space. It's kind of like giving you that terraforming Mars kind of combo-tastic working through things, but in a much more finite space, which sometimes is nice. Sometimes you don't want that like 4-hour, mega gaming experience. You want something that you can play in like an hour and a half, but you feel like you got to do really cool things. And oh man, if I can just buy that card before someone else, and then it's going to totally fit with the engine I'm building. And I like that you can't buy that many cards. It makes each card purchase a very significant choice. And I like that balance of game. And I think that's something that this is Burnt Island Games. And their prior game I also got, which is Endeavor Deep Sea. There's an expansion coming out for that. And I have already jumped on the Kickstarter for that. And, also because it had Penguin Migration. I mean, come on, Penguin Migration. Paxton would not let me pass that up. And it had a similar feeling, I believe. I've been playing it more recently. The actions that you're taking in the game itself being fairly straightforward, but how you navigate through the game and how you succeed over other people if you're playing competitively. In that game, you can play cooperatively as well. But also if you're playing cooperatively and you're just trying to be more efficient, that's where the complexity of the game comes. And I think that's a really cool gaming space to be in. So I'm very excited to see what is next from Burnt Island Games. If this is the space that they're looking for, this just happened to be, both of these games have that, loving that from Burnt Island Games. So let's talk about what the actions are here. There's the spaces on the board itself, and then there's 4 spaces that there's some variability each game that come out. Each player has 3 of these landers that they can use. And something here is that there's the Earth spaces and the Moon spaces. And depending on which space you go to, so there's different locations and there's different sites in them. And if you go to one of the spots with the little shuttle arrow, like this one, at the end of this round, this shuttle is going to be launched over to the moon. It's actually going to start there. However, if it's a regular spot without that little shuttle, then it's going to return back to Earth. So there's a game of where do you want that lander to be at the beginning of the next turn. And sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're doing one of the projects, like this is doing the species project, if you do the species project, you are going to end up on the other side, and that's true over here as well. On the moon is where you do the laser and the shield project, which makes sense. Those are going to be stationed on the moon, of course, whereas the species one is going to be something you're doing on Earth. If you do one of those on the moon, the laser or the shield, you would then going to have to return to Earth, and you don't have a choice about that. However, with some of these supply spots, the energy, knowledge, minerals, and organics, you have an option of doing a smaller amount of resources and staying, or a larger amount, but that's going to put you on the other side. So there's a choice of what matters more, the amount of the resource, or where do you want to end up. And you'll notice here there's a tag here, an Earth tag, instead of just taking a straight number 2 or 3 of the resource. If you have Earth tags, which can be on the cards, or you get Earth tags, science tags, moon tags, you can use these by flipping these over as well and take a multiplier. So you could get 4, like if you had 2 Earth tags, and you do these by like using your card for that turn, turning it over. You could do a combination of tags on your board or on a card. And if you had 3 Earth tags that you could use, you could actually get 6 energy instead. So that's part of the game, as well as using the cards and these tags that you can get through various means as a resource as well to accomplish different goals. So there's all 4 of the main resources that are represented here on your board. While we're on the resources here, you'll notice there's this little black marker. These all start here at the bottom, right above the 0, but you can actually move up the starting threshold. And so then at the beginning of each round, this actually resets to that threshold. So then you can create an engine of that. That could be through cards that you combo. When you do certain actions, you can increase that threshold. You can invest in research to do that, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So that's just something to be aware of with those resources. And the only other spot here on Earth is buying cards. So we're going to talk about the cards in a minute. We're just going to go back here to the moon. The other spots here on the moon are the research, which you see here on your board. You spend knowledge to do those. You can increase the different thresholds. You can buy these tags to create some of those combos. So the number of times you can work on a project is based on the number of tags. Otherwise, you can only do it once if you don't have the corresponding tag. You also see you can transport between the moon and Earth if you want to move your lander, but it costs an energy. But that takes up your entire turn, but you can invest 2 knowledge to immediately be able to take a turn so someone doesn't get a spot you want. But you can invest in research so that it can cost anything, so you can change that cost. You can invest so you can spend any 2 resources, basic resources, to be any other resource. This ingenuity is a wild resource, but it doesn't count for this. Anytime there's this 4 symbol, that's the basic resources. It's not this ingenuity. This is a very important one I have found, which is that you can use science tags as any other tag. So that's been something I've been doing a lot, is getting science tags and using them as Earth and moon tags. You can make it cheaper to buy cards. We'll talk about buying cards. And then these level 2, this is just straight up scoring. So these are more expensive, so you probably need to have a threshold here or good generation of knowledge. Because each of these is 5, and then it makes it so that every time that you're performing work on a specific project or buying a card, you're just getting a victory point. Or every time one of these cubes is drawn from the bag, you'll get 1 or 2 if you've invested twice in that. So it's just a way every turn to kind of ratchet up that scoreboard. And it's hard to get points outside of the in-game scoring for the different projects, for your placements in the different projects. So any way you can claw your way up that scoreboard is very important. So if you invest a lot in this, then that could be a strategy. And I haven't pursued just like diving into just doing this as an option. And I think it could be an intriguing strategy. So I want to try that out. And there's this interesting spot here, which is take the lead. So the first player marker stays in the same place until someone takes the lead. Someone places there, they get to take the first player marker, they become the lead, and then they get to increase their ingenuity threshold, so then they have ingenuity generation at the beginning of their turn. And then at the end of the round, they get an extra bonus of they get to move their lander to an available spot and then take kind of an extra little action only on the moon as well. It has to be an available spot. This researched twice is always available because there's a little infinity symbol, but there's rules depending on player count about availability of other spots, but that can be pretty powerful. At the beginning of the game, you might be limited just to that research depending on the number of players, but that's how you get the lead. And if you really on your next turn want to research in something or get some resource, then that could be pretty powerful. And we're not going to really talk about these extra spots because they do change out, but they do crazy things like allow you to trash cards, to just get free here. So if you've determined later in the game that a card's no longer useful, or it could give you, based on the number of tags, just free basic research, or here you can just spend knowledge to get victory points. So there's all kinds of weird things there, but we're not going to dive into those too much. What we're going to return to, though, is talking about the other main part of the game, because we've kind of hit on those, because you can see it's fairly straightforward. You're getting resources, you're getting those tags to do the multipliers of the resources and to be able to work on the projects. You're researching to increase your efficiencies, allow you different things, maybe point generations, maybe increase these thresholds. We should just talk really quickly, though, maybe before we talk about the cards, just about working on these projects. So when you work on these projects, you don't just get to go up the project track. You do have to spend also the resource that matches that track. And it's dependent upon where you are on the track. So these first 3 spots are one of that resource. The next 3 are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you see. And then every time you invest in that project, no matter how many spots you move, you get the bonus at the end of the track, which changes as the game goes along. And so what's showing right now is you get to move up your threshold of your ingenuity. You get a free level 2, which is pretty powerful. And this is you get a moon or an earth tag. And if you're the first person to reach these leader points, only the first person gets 3 victory points, 2 victory points, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Anyone that follows after that doesn't get that. And then this is when these bonuses change as well. So here are the bonuses that were on before. So here, this was move up any basic threshold. For the shield track, it was research, but you still had to pay the required cost. But then it was free 1 level research, and now it's free 2 level research. For the top track, it's a science tag. Now it's an earth or moon tag. And then the final level is any tag. And then the final level of the species 1 is move up the threshold for knowledge, minerals, and organics. So when you invest in these tracks can be important too, because you might want the bonus that's available there. But you have to have the resources. So you could have the tags, you could have 4 tags that you could use, but you actually would have to calculate and make sure you can pay the resources to move up those 4 spots. And how many of our spots you move up, that's how many of those cubes you're adding to that bag. And so that's how you hopefully assure that your track that you are investing in the most is going to win. But of course, that's just a possibility. And then finally, let's just talk about the cards. So this is buying cards. This bottom space is just buy a card. You could get an ingenuity resource, which could help in a pinch. You just need 1 more resource to maybe get 3 in a row or something there. But otherwise, it's buy 1 card. And then this top one, you can buy multiple cards if you have earth tags. So it's kind of nice here. This is the card market. So there's always 3 cards. This is the discard on the right. And the cards themselves show you what their cost is. These top rows, the yellow cards, are the action cards. They cost the number of knowledge times the number of cards that you currently have. This second row, the boost, it's the same thing except for it's minerals times the cards you have. And the bottom row, species, it's organics times the number of cards you have. So the more cards you have, the more expensive it gets. And so something that's interesting about that is if you're buying multiple cards in a round, the first card is going to cost less resources than the next card you get because you just bought a card and now you have 4 cards. And so now it's going to cost 4 resources for the next card, or how many ever that is, but the sequencing could matter. That's the part I was talking about earlier where it becomes more expensive to buy the cards. And so those choices are very important. Now you can make the cost less expensive if you invest in these 3 spots here, which pay 1 resource less when you buy a card. So you can mitigate that a little bit if you invest in those. But still, it makes the decisions here very important. And these cards are so important to your success in this game. You start out with a basic boost card, which is gain 1 basic resource anytime you gain another basic resource. You get a random action card, which is going to be spend 1 energy to work on a specific project, which is going to be one of these 3 projects. So that's randomized, so you don't know which one you're going to get. Now you still have to spend the cost of working on that project. It just allows you to work on that project without going to one of the worker placement spots. And then you get 2 green species cards and you get to pick one of them. So let's talk about those first. Those are the easiest to talk about actually. All of the green species cards have an earth, a science, and a moon tag. As I mentioned, if you invest in the research of this spot right here, you can turn science tags into wilds. So then you can make it that anytime you use one of these cards, whether you're using it as earth or moon, you get 2 tags on the 1 card. So I think that's a hot tip. So you can use these for the tags, but then otherwise these are end game scoring points. As I mentioned, it's hard to get points outside of the scoring for these main tracks. And so you need to find all opportunities. And this is one of the main opportunities. And so these will give you bonuses for like leftover knowledge resources. This is one for points for every 2 steps your energy track baseline has been raised. Here's for every 2 steps you've advanced on the shield track. Here, this one in front of me is for leftover energy. So it can be a lot of different things, but these are in-game, and then while you're in the game, they're useful for the tags. And then we'll jump up to these action cards. These all require 1 energy to spend. Some of them have tags, some of them don't, and they can do any number of things, but they're an additional action. They allow you to take an action, and in fact, action cards are a turn. You can take a turn of placing a lander and doing something. I mentioned that using the express shuttle is a turn. And then the other type of thing that takes an entire turn is using an action card. That also counts as an entire turn. So this basically allows you to take a turn doing whatever is on this. Showed the one that allowed us to work on the species project. Here's one that allows you to work on the shield project, but also has tags, so it's better than the starter one that I had. Here's one, place a lander as normal, but instead of activating its location, activate a location on the same world that has a rival's lander in it, so it allows you to use a space that's occupied, so that's very handy. Someone moved up a track and you want to get to that leader bonus before someone else does, or if you don't have the first place marker, so you can beat them to it. Let's just take a quick look at a couple of others. Here's one, just gain a mineral plus 1 mineral per a tag that you use, so it's just mineral generation. This is activate a stay location that you already have a lander in. This is organic generation. Here's knowledge generation. Here's allowing you to work on the laser project, and then it says if you hit a leader bonus and are not the leader, you can spend an energy to gain the bonus anyway. So all kinds of wacky options there. But this is one of my favorite parts of the game, is that there's lots of things going on here. This market circulates a lot. It's both when people buy cards, but then as this asteroid moves up, there are several spots that wipe the right card of the market. It always flows to the right. And so it keeps it flowing as well. And so you're going to see a lot of new cards. So you might not want to buy too early if the cards don't fit into your strategy. You might want to wait and build up some other resources or invest in research to improve other things to be ready when the right cards come out. But finding those right card combinations is a huge difference. I've been playing a lot solo, and if you don't really work those combos and make sure that they are optimal, then you just can flounder around a lot. It's very important to make sure those work together, and I love that. I love that those decisions are so important, and it gives you a great feeling when you find something that really works well together and you figure out how to work it and how to work it with the options that are available on the board. And it is so great that it feels so straightforward, but yet you have those different options of flow. So I love that it's quick playing. I love that it feels like there's a lot of strategic options. I love that there's such a thematic aspect to it of like, you don't know how fast the asteroid's going to move. You don't know quite when the end game's coming. You can kind of see it coming. Sometimes it happens a little faster than you want. Like, oh my gosh, I thought we had 2 more rounds. And like now the next round's the last one. I got to do something now. Or I think the last round's the next one. But then you draw the next round and like, oh, actually it was 1 cube short and we have another extra round. So there's the element of mystery that I think is very fun. And I just really love that last round of like, all right, we're firing the laser now. Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? You know, and it just is super fun. I'm really enjoying it. And that's why it's in the board game fun phase for this week. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, you found it useful, please like and subscribe. It's super appreciated. And just remember, the only rule is that there are no rules, except in board games.